WORAM and FM, New York.
About 10 minutes ago, I'm walking through Times Square under that fantastic sign that says the Bible in CinemaScope, widescreen, ultrascope, errata color. It's spread out all across the sky there, and the lights are lighting up. And in the middle of it all, there's a guy walking right down the sidewalk there with 16,000 people. And of course, you know what Times Square is like, you know. Anyway, he's walking down Times Square, and he's got a big sign, holding it up. It's about 15 stories high, it looks like. It's got a big high pole, and on the top of the sign simply says, "Sin now, pay later." Which I kind of think puts it in sort of a nutshell. You know, that's not a bad idea. I wonder where it is. There must be some place where you can put it all on credit. Sign for the whole shebang, you know, as we go marching towards the edge of the cliff. If you were to select music to go over the cliff by, music to go into the abyss with, alongside the whole crowd, you know, entire mankind is with you. Bring it up there, man. It's funny how... Have you ever been around when somebody got held up? You ever been around when something happened like that? Believe me, so help me, it's never the way you think it's going to be. The only time I was ever anywhere near a real newspaper story of that kind, you know, the sudden crime breaks out, I could not believe it. One long, hot summer. You know, whenever I see that title, The Long, Hot Summer, I am reminded of my own personal long, hot summer. I was going to college, and I got myself a summer job working in this radio station in Cincinnati. And directly across the river was this festering town. Whew, boy. Well, every time I think of Covington and Newport, Kentucky, these are festering towns. The heat lays down on the Ohio Valley, right in that area. The Ohio River's right there, see? If you don't know your geography, Cincinnati lies in the very southernmost end of Ohio, way down at the end. And it's kind of like a country by itself. John Gunther, in his book, Inside America, and he said if people were to ask me what were the 10 most cosmopolitan towns in the United States, I would have to list 1, New York, 2, San Francisco, 3, Cincinnati, a curious city. Now, he means cosmopolitan. He does not mean European. He means cosmopolitan. It was largely settled by Germans back around the turn of the century. And in fact, the entire area down there is called the Rhineland, at the Queen City of the West. And it's a strange, isolated town. Well, directly across from Cincinnati, the river there must be 1.5 miles wide. It's a giant river. And across that river, there are 2 or 3 suspension bridges that lay from Cincinnati across to that dark, lowering shore with the great towering hills that go higher and higher and sort of roll off to the west. That is KY, Kentucky. And that's a kind of mysterious land to even the people who live in Cincinnati. It's just a very different world. You know how the Jerseyites are very different to people who live in New York? Somehow living in Jersey is a whole new mystique. Well, multiply that by 500 and you have the difference between Cincinnati and Kentucky. The accent is different. Everything, the whole scene. And the heat, ooh, boy, the heat lays there. And across the river in Covington and in Newport, these 2 towns lay there, and they're famous for a lot of things. Let me tell you, these towns really, really go. And at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on Madison Avenue in Kentucky, and out across in Newport, the towns are wide open, wild, just not the kind of wide open like Times Square, but a different kind. They have juke joints. This is a Kentucky version of the discotheque. A great big red and green jukebox over in the corner there, and it's playing Elvis Presley records. Hound dog! It comes out night after night, and the sound of twanging guitars lay out there across that brick road, just like snow drifting down out of the sky. You can hear those guitars and those banjos a twanging, and you can hear those strange nasal voices. And the one sound that you hear at maybe 3 o'clock in the morning is the sound of guys roaring up and down the streets that have come up from Hazard, Kentucky and Rabbit Hash, Kentucky. Yeah, there's a town called Rabbit Hash, Kentucky. And they roar up and down the streets in their hot rods. They're really not hot rods. They're 47 Mercuries. They're 53 Fords that have been channeled, cut down, and painted purple. You know, that kind of thing. And you go, wow! Get out of my way! Yeah, wow! Well, that's life among the Aborigines. It's really something out there. It's a wild scene. And so I've got a pad above a jewelry store. And so my apartment was never dark, man, never. It was lit from the outside by red neon lights. No matter what happened, I pull the shades and it comes through. It soaks in through the walls, and you can feel the jukeboxes. It's like 170 degrees all the time in there, and I could smell the catfish in the river. And once in a while, out on the river boat would go by. I don't know whether any of you have ever heard the sound of a stern wheeler going past a block and a half from your house with the calliope going. It is a wild sound. Yeah, you can hear it drifting at 2 o'clock in the morning. You hear boop, 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 boop. That would be when it was on its trip out. And then when it's coming back, the calliope is turned off, and all you hear is chook, 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 chook. That's the way a paddle wheeler sounds from a block away. Chook, 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 chook. And she drifts into the landing down there. And then boop, boop. And that's it, silence. Well, about a half a block down the street from me was the Wheel Inn Diner. How about that for a name? The Wheel Inn Diner. A peculiar homogeneous joint. And it had a great big neon wheel that reached up about 75 feet in the air, you know, like a truck wheel. And it was one of those that spun around and go wheelin', it would say, in green, wheelin', big red wheel. And then it would be a big arrow that cut right across it, said, eat, eat, eat. And all the time it's pointing, wheelin', wheelin'. Well, so that was the way it was. All right, now you got the picture. Well, every night when I found I couldn't sleep, which was every night about 2:30, I would get up, and remember I had a radio program at 5 a.m., so I would get up and I would walk down onto that brick road. I would see the purple Fords going past and hear the yelling and the hollering and the guitars crunching over other guys' heads, and I could hear the knives going into ribs. And I would walk down to the middle of the next block to the Wheel Inn Diner. And it was brightly lit. You know how diners are with the big white lights all over the place and the chrome and the stainless steel and everything. It was very antiseptic. And always back at the counter is Clem, big fat guy. He's back there and always say, "Hi, boy." That's Kentucky. "Hi, boy." And there was a woman there named Emily who worked behind the counter, big fat blonde who had rings all over her. She had big earrings that hung down to her knees, you know, that kind of stuff. And she's working back there with a white costume. I'd come in. I'd sit down in the middle there. I had 2 or 3 guys, truck drivers would be down at the other end, a couple of truck drivers would be at the other end, and then there would be 2 or 3 people on what euphemistically were called dates in Kentucky. Oh, wow. You never saw more adenoids in your life. And I'm sitting there. No, it's really a little surprising, you know, to see a pair of adenoids come in with feet. Literally, you know, with a hat on top. And they'd sit down there at the other end. I hear this voices twanging. The jukebox starts roaring out. Ernest Tubb record is booming out. Or maybe the Delmore Twins are racking it out. Or Grandpa Jones starts singing, "I want to come back to you, baby. Pow! I want to come back to you now. Pow, pow, pow." Oh, boy. So I'm leaning back there. I always would come in and get myself a vanilla malt. It was the only thing that was cold. You know, Cokes were sweet, and I'd sit there and drink my vanilla malt and eat a hamburger and sort of kill time. That's all. And the neon signs are flashing. This is really American life, you know. This is pure distilled American life. Well, one night I'm sitting there. It must have been about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, just sitting there. Clem is back at the cash register, one of these big chrome jobs, you know, sitting there picking his teeth, reading the Police Gazette. And the big old waitress is putting some more pies into the case. Everything is going normal. A couple of clots are sitting up there in the front there with their jackets on and their, you know, the little hats with the white bills, their motorcycle type things. The world is going along. When suddenly the door opens, they had these sliding doors, and it was an air-conditioned place. That's really why I came there. And they had these little sliding doors. And the door slides open, and in steps a chick. A real chick. She was about 18 years old, And she was sort of dark-haired and looked very, very civilized. And I said, well, hey, hi, George. And the chick comes in and sits down at the end booth. They had these little tiny booths in there. She sits at the end booth. Clem starts to get up. He's going to walk over and see what she wants. And he's got a couple of menus in his hand. And Clem walks over towards her. And in then came her little brother. Her little brother looked like he was about, I'd say, 10, 12, something like that. This kid comes in. And he's wearing a sweater, a little sleeveless type sweater with a pair of chinos. And he sits down there with her. And Clem goes over and says, well, what do you want, folks? And the girl takes the menu and she looks at it. I'm eyeing the chick, see? I'm sitting there. George. Things are picking up here. And so I turn, you see, and I'm watching her now in the mirror. They had a mirror right back at the bar, see? And I'm sitting there watching her and drinking my malt and knocking down the cheeseburger, and I'm trying to play it cool. I'm sitting there saying, oh, well, she's got to see this profile. Eventually, she's got to see it. See, I'm watching the thing. I'm giving her the eye, and she is paying no attention, and she's sitting there with her kid brother. And Clem goes back around the counter, and now he gets a couple of pieces of pumpkin pie or something. He comes out with a pie, and he's got the Coke and the candy or whatever it is, and he goes back and he puts it down in his little chit-chat, and he comes back and sits down there, back at the cash register. And I'm watching that. I'm slopping up that vanilla malt. Oh, if you have never lived until you have heard somebody sing through one nostril at 3 o'clock in the morning, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Well, that's the way they sound. They go in and out, night after. I'm sitting there, and the life is just rich and full now. Ernie Tubb is roaring out of the jukebox, and I'm watching the chick. I'm really on the make. See, I'm looking the scene over, and I'm knocking down the malt, and Clem is looking at me. See, Clem realizes that old Shep is going to go into high gear here any second now. See, and he's looking at me. You know how fat men grin? He's got that fat man grin, He's sort of just half grin there. It's a little unshaven. And I'm watching the chick. And she's looking in her purse. See, I see she's going through her purse. And I figure, well, she's going to get out the compact. She's going to do a little nose dusting. This is the thing that men know, Whenever they get the attention of the chick, somehow they get a little flustered, they start lighting cigarettes or something. So I said, I'm beginning to make the scene here. I'm scoring a little bit. And she reaches down in her purse. And she pulls something out. That is the first time I have ever seen a blue steel compact. I look again, I can't believe it. She has got a Roscoe mat that must have weighed 4 1/4 pounds. This thing was at least a 105 howitzer. I never saw anything like it. I sort of scrunched back. Without saying a word, this chick gets up and walks over to Clem, holds this thing up, and said in a nice, clearly modulated voice with just the touch of a southern accent, "This is a stick-up." There was a silence that you could have cut with a butter knife. In spite of the jukebox roaring, Clem said, "What?" She just holds the gun up, doesn't say anything, just points it right at his head. Said, "Oh, I see." He gets up there, he's a fat man. He starts to hitch up his pants. He said, "Pull up your hands." "Oh, I see." And she walks back up the counter and hits the no sale thing. Boing! With that, this little kid gets up, and he's got a knife in his mitt and a bag. He comes over, and he's shoveling the money in, and there she stands with the Roscoe on all of us. Holy smokes. What are you doing now, Matt? Well, she comes out from behind the counter, and Clem is standing there with his mouth hanging over. He ain't moving. He's sweating. The air conditioning is going. The temperature is 34 degrees in this joint, and he's sweating. He just stand there. He ain't moving an eyeball. He isn't going to move. And she comes back from around the counter, and she walks up to each one of us. She says, "Give me your wallet. Come on, put it on the counter there." And each one of us reaches in his pocket and lays it out. Sitting there, boom, boom. It's the only time in my life I ever got robbed at gunpoint. Boom, boom. There is 5 wallets laid out along that 4 mica counter. Boom, 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 with the ice water. Boom, 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 between the cheeseburgers. And there ain't a muscle being moved. And she just walks along and picks each one up as she goes. Plunk, plunk, in the bag. The kid's following her. And she's got the Roscoe, turns around. She says, "I want to thank all of you." Backs out of the joint and then stops by the door. She says, "Stay away from the phone. Count 10. And then you can call anyone you want." She slides the door open, and they're out in the night. And we sat there for a second. And then out in the parking lot, you heard, "Whoom, whoom, wow, whoa." Off in the distance, Tell you, crime don't look the way it should look. I'll tell you that. It just don't. And we're sitting there, all of us, the whole crowd of us is sitting there kind of with that sweaty feeling inside. And finally, Clem said, I guess we better call the police. And somebody sitting down at the other end of the counter says, what are you talking about, Clem? That won't do you no damn bit of good. And Clem said, well, better call him anyway. And the guy at the other guy said, okay, Clem, he said, use your dime. You got a dime left? And so we start looking for dimes. We got no driver's license. The whole scene is gone. I've lost my $19, the whole bit, you know. And so we start looking for dimes, and finally somebody comes up with a dime and goes around, you know, puts it back up to the thing in the slot and makes the call. And we sat there. 15 minutes go by, 20 minutes. And finally that big old car with that flashing red light shows up out in front. And a couple of these real big Covington, Kentucky policemen get out. Oh, man. They get out, they come walking in, you know, they got the big black belts around their waists, you know, a couple of Roscoes hanging on each side, and they come walking in. What's going on in here? And Clem says, we've been held up. Yeah, well, all right, let's have a description. Oh, if you sit down here, give me a description. It's he gets out his notebook. And Clem says, well, it was a girl. A girl, kind of a dark, pretty girl come in here. He said, oh, I know, that's Clara. Yeah, okay, that's Clara. That's Clara. Yeah, that's Clara. She's been knocking over joints all around. She's just come up from, I believe, she come up from Louisville. Yeah, okay, what time's she in here? Let's see, what time is it now? It's 17 minutes past 3. You say, what time? You figure it's about 10 minutes to 3 she came in here? Okay. 2:51. Was she accompanied? And yeah, she came with a little kid. Looks like, yeah, that's Howard. Okay, Howard came in here. We're sitting there. It just don't look like Route 66, you know? This ain't the way it should be. And one of the guys at the end says, you think you'll get him? Think you'll get him, Sheriff? So I ain't no sheriff, but I don't think so, no. So I figure we'll get him about spring, maybe. We'll get him next spring. So we'll get him. Don't worry about it. And somebody says, well, what about my driver's license? And you just got to go down to City Hall tomorrow, tell them that Claire was around, that's all. Maybe they'll find it in the river. Out they go. And I hear the sound, whoop, whoop. Off goes the fuzz. Well, I sat there for a minute with my straw in my mouth. Clem sits down at the other end. And I'm reaching in my pocket to pay. Clem says, it's on the house tonight. We're all busted. I go out into the darkness now. It's now about 3:45. The heat is laying down on me. A couple of Mercuries go by, and I can hear the jukeboxes roaring out of the next juke joint. And I can hear Ernest Tubb wailing in the darkness out there. And somewhere off in the distance, the old paddle wheeler is getting ready to make its first morning trip. Chook, 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 chook. Oh, life is rich. Life is real. Life is life. I'm the sheik of Araby. And your love, baby, belongs to me. Some night when you're asleep, into your tent I'll creep, 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 creep. The stars above